Sue, here we are.
Wow.
All day, long sessions. We've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tech coaches checking out. We've had hundreds of tech coaches on our chats. We've gone from what does a tech coach do? How do you interact with students? How do you get professional development? How do you handle administrators? And now I'm looking forward to this session so much.
Oh, me too.
It's about what is coming next for us as tech coaches. How do we make sure that we're not only providing the right support, the right strategies, but we're also preparing our districts for the future?
Yes. How are we going to get ready for the future? Future ready.
And so I want to bring on, without further ado, my good friend Brianna Hodges and Dana. Ladies, how are you today? Welcome to the last amazing session here of Tech Coach Live. Are you ready to bring the energy?
Oh my goodness, I want some, I need a theme song, are you ready? Yes, we're super excited to be here. So
I
excited.
was thinking a little more like Rocky might be appropriate. I don't know.
Let me see, how about this one? No, that's not the right one. Okay, welcome everybody to Yeah, that's what happens when you give a podcaster a beatbox. Guys, welcome so much to Tech Coach Live. My name is Jeff, and of course with me for the entire duration of this is Susan Vincent. Today we are talking about the Future Ready Tech Coaches, the Future Ready Coaching Program. Brianna, thank you so much for coming on today. Talk to us a little bit about Future Ready, and then we'll dive into the coaching applications and processes and all that great stuff that you guys going on here. What is Future Ready?
So Future Ready is a project of the Alliance for Excellent Education, and it is a nonprofit. One of the great things about it is that it is completely practitioner-based. And so our main goal is to learn from others across the country what people are doing, what you're finding success with, and being able to amplify that so that we can truly achieve equitable learning opportunities for all students. So that's kind of the main idea of Future Ready. A few years ago, we went through the Future Ready coaching, the Future Ready framework, and decided to look at that through a couple different lenses. 5 lenses to be exact. So we have Future Ready librarians, Future Ready principals, Future Ready district leaders, Future Ready instructional coaches, and Future Ready tech leaders. That was a pop quiz moment for me to remember all of those. So the great thing about that is that we look through, our frameworks are not different. We look at the same gears, which we have 7 gears plus collaborative leadership. And those are kind of those main elements, like robust infrastructure and personalized professional learning and curriculum instruction and assessment, just different ones that are core to the educational process. And then we look through the lens of what's important as a principal to when we're considering robust infrastructure, right? So the great thing about it is that no group was allowed to say, data and privacy, that's not my thing. So everybody had to look at it to say, this is what our role as coaches, this is how we're going to address that gear. So it's a lot of fun, and it's, again, like I said, a huge collaborative opportunity.
Talk to us a little bit about the Alliance. We've seen the group, we've seen the Twitter. What is the Alliance for Excellence in Education? Am I saying that right?
Yes. So it is a nonprofit based in out of Washington, D.C. It is is nonpartisan. It is not affiliated with any specific groups or anything like that. It's truly an opportunity for, there's lots of different pieces that come through that. Like I said, Future Ready is the main project that Dana and I work with through that. But there's also, it's a huge focus for equitable educational opportunities. So leading through a lot of the conversations around digital equity, as well as educational equity, different types of explorations around learning sciences. I honestly, there's so many different projects that they're working on that it's kind of hard for me to rattle all of them off. But it's a really cool thing to look at to understand that there are so many people that are looking for ways to be able to promote equitable education and find ways for us to achieve that all across the country.
I love the fact that your website over at futureready.org has stuff for everybody. As you said, no matter what the strand is, it's all focused on the same thing. Throughout this entire conference, we didn't really want to talk about it, but you can't help but talk about the whole concept of being a tech coach in today's world. Talk to us a little bit about this first graphic here about the video series on coaching through COVID. This is so important for us.
So I'll kick it off a bit, and I'm going to toss it over to Dana because I know y'all don't want to just hear my twang the whole time. So one of the things that we did
all day.
that one of the things that we really felt was super important when we were talking about, really kind of processing what all was going on with the uncertain times that we're living through right now was, what does that mean for coaches, and how can we really support the learning that's happening, and what does that look like? Because it's not always, and I know this has been a topic of conversation throughout the day, that it's not just supporting the technology, it's supporting the learning, it's supporting the social emotional learning, it's supporting the administrators, it's supporting the teachers and the parents and the students, and on and on and on and on. And with that, that's a huge opportunity, and it's also a very heavy I'm not going to say burden, because it's not a burden. It's just a lot to shoulder. It's a lot to say, okay, where do I start, and how can I handle all of this? Because you don't necessarily know where to look. And so Dana and I reached out to some really great people and said, hey, what are you guys doing? What does this look like? Because we know that our ideas are not just the only ones that are out there. We really wanted to tap into that PLN and get some suggestions of what people were doing across the country. Dr. Joe Sanfilippo is on there, Matt Miller out of Lakota, Ohio, Tom Murray. We had just lots of conversations around, what are you doing at your districts and how does this work? So Dana, fill in the blanks where I'm sure I left off.
I think that the idea was actually born through a conversation we had, and we really wanted to help people, and we really wanted to help people make a difference in what it is that they were doing. And the conversation, at least in my school district, I have a very small team, was definitely, this is our time to shine, when so many people were overwhelmed by what it is we were doing and what was going to happen and how are we going to get through all of this. We really did focus on what are the essentials and what can we do to try to help people. And embedded in a lot of that was self-care and making sure that people were taking care of themselves. So you'll see a little bit on that piece as well. But one of the things that we found in doing a series like this was that, and I know that this was a theme webbed through the fabric of the day today, is so many people are in the same boat. So many people have the same experiences, not only in the United States, but all over the world. So to get those messages out for people to know and understand early on that they were not in this by themselves, that we are all in this together, was really important to both Bree and myself. So I think that was one of the reasons why we actually started to kick off the series. It was very rewarding. Definitely people made connections through that. And we did get quite a few people that reached out, and it was really embedded in the Future Ready idea of how is it that we can help each other, whether I'm in New York or whether you're in California or you're in another country and beyond. So it was cool. It was very exciting.
Talk to us a little bit about the feedback that you've gotten from this series. I'm assuming that this is something that everybody right now is clearly talking about and needs to be talking about as we move into the school year.
Well, I think one of the big pieces of it is really truly understanding what we mean by coach. And, for me, when I was still in the classroom, or when I was still on campuses every day working side by side with teachers, you're, as a coach, you're constantly reminding teachers, hey, I'm in this with you. You're not by yourself. I promise, just, trust me, we're going to do this together. And a pandemic definitely tests that, right? And all of a sudden you're sheltered in place and you've just got your computer, and maybe you're not necessarily up on being as familiar with it as you thought you were, or, it's just a totally different setup. And so reminding coaches that we're not necessarily looking at the training aspect of this. And I want to circle back to that here in a minute, but instead we're talking about truly that relationship of, I promise you, I've got you 100% of the way. I will support you, get through this. This is going to be a teamwork opportunity if you need it. If, I will help you with whatever you need. And just reminding teachers that we're in this together to support that learning environment was a really big thing that kept coming out over and over again. That's a lot of the feedback that we've received, was that nobody had, like, we did not intend this video series to be, hey, watch this and you're going to have a little manual that you're going to be able to take into the next pandemic and you're going to have this all figured out. Like, that, we all know that that doesn't exist, and we know that that doesn't work. And so instead, it was a lot of focus on those characteristics, those, where do you need to be putting your focus when it comes to building those relationships, when it comes to creating that trust, when it comes to filling your cup with self-care, so that way you can handle all of these pieces. So it became that's one of the pieces that I know I heard a lot of. Dana, how about you?
I would have to say I'm going to go back pre-pandemic, which seems like it was, I don't even know how long ago, years ago, right? Where
that way.
we had professional learning and teachers really had the opportunity to choose. Oh, I think I'm going to go attend that, that hour session after school, or I'm going to log on and I want to learn a little bit about this. It was really a choice. And I would say after March, there were not so many choices. We were really heroes. So some of the feedback that I got was, it was a little email from a colleague, a local colleague, and it said, and I quote it, "Who would have known for all these years you were actually preparing us for a pandemic?" Which,
yeah.
I found that to be very interesting, because we, in our district and, through Future Ready, there's lots of opportunities for learning. And again, all of those opportunities were choices. I would say earlier this summer, we held a summit for instructional leaders, and it was extremely well attended. And again, through that experience, we had a lot of feedback, specifically on we're all in this together, that many people are experiencing the same types of challenges and also some celebrations throughout the United States. So that was very rewarding in the feedback received, that people were thankful for the position. They understood the position a little bit better. And not only that, but we were like heroes. I was helping. I got my cape on. It's under my clothes today. So
let's talk a little bit about Future Ready here. I remember a couple years ago, my district and I set off to become a Future Ready school. And we did the survey. And that told us an awful lot about where we are, where we were, where we want to go. If I'm a tech coach, is there such a survey? Is there such a self-reflection that I can take? And if I want to figure out if I'm a Future Ready tech coach, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I join this community?
So great question. First and foremost, there is not a separate self-evaluation at this time for each one of the strands. I know the librarians have kind of been, they're testing one, but we have not created specific self-assessment, self-reflection type situations for the strands. And there's kind of a reason in my mind behind that. And it's because what again, going back to when it was contrived, it was, the idea was that we're all in this together. And so you take that assessment as a group, as a district, as a campus, whoever you're working with, and say, okay, this is our main priority. This is where we want to go. And then we start to break that apart. Okay, now how does this come together, right? I always say there's more than one person that's employed by a school district. That's because everybody has roles that's in there. And so you want to start to break that apart, and you want to say, okay, how am I, considering this? What does this look like? That said, if you go to futureready.org/instructional or /coaches, the framework is there, and it will allow you to look at each one of the gears. And underneath the gears, there are certain bullet points that we've kind of pulled out that are those characteristics of what the mindsets that we hope that you're going to have when you're looking at that through a Future Ready lens. And so it's things like, understanding that personalized professional learning doesn't mean standing in front of a group and saying, I'm going to show you how to turn on your computer, right? That's the culture of training. And we really want to move that into a culture of personalized learning, right? So keeping that learning at the goal, that allows us to talk about really what coaching is. And so one of the ways that I think about that is that training is truly when you're talking about fluency and understanding of a very specific piece. And that's important. There are definitely times, I was in a school district where we went from a Windows-based to a to an Apple-based environment. And so I spent a lot of time talking about where's the right click? How do I do this? What does this look like? So that that said, when we talk about coaching, there is a huge difference between training and coaching. And coaching is more about understanding the context. It's about learning insight, right? Like I can know every single thing that there is to know about baseball, and I could be a terrible baseball coach. I can be a terrible player and an amazing coach. I can be an amazing coach and a terrible player. And so it's a different mindset that we have to kind of shift into. And so I think that's, kind of piggybacking from what Dana was talking about, our virtual summit with the instructional leaders. That's been one of the things that I think has really kind of fleshed out of this pandemic, and it makes my heart so very happy, is that in a lot of situations you see conversations around tech coaches and ed techs, or however we want to silo that situation, that those initiatives, those one-to-one initiatives, those types of things become very attached to a tech coach or very attached to a technology department. And so it kind of almost becomes, well, that's their thing. I'm not going to get involved in that. They know better than we do. But instead of looking at this from this perspective, this pandemic really brought in all of that reflection of like, okay, so how does learning really connect into ed tech? How does this really happen? What does instruction have to do with this? How can assessment really, can be pulled in? Looking at it from that equity standpoint. Oh, we were one-to-one. We thought we were totally fine. Oh, we really didn't understand that we weren't getting enough questions out there about Wi-Fi and internet at home. We didn't, so it really brought in that that entire team standpoint to really look at that through the coaching lens and figure out where we could sorry, I'm stumbling over my words right now, but really where we could improve our movement in order to grow things.
Brianna, we're looking here at the website under the coaching framework here, and I love the fact that at the bottom of the framework says community partnerships. This is something that is so important to every school district, is to have a great relationship with their community, both in a partnership realm, in a teaching, learning, building this together. Talk to us a little bit about why tech coaches need to be outstanding members of the entire learning community.
Well, I'll give you an example from a previous situation, and that
it's definitely one of the most important roles.
It is. Go for it, Dana. You tell, and then I'll
together. It truly does. It helps keep all the fabric together in anything that you're looking to do in a school building. Instructional coaches or coaches don't only help teachers; they help administrators. They help, librarians. That role is embedded in so many different places within a school building or even a school district that. Once COVID hit and we were home and we had those stay-at-home orders, we were a huge part of that community that was built. Where we, in our district, we pulled in another school district and we worked together to provide professional learning and embedded social, emotional health into that. And so I think when it comes to community, like I said, the coaching piece is definitely a really, really important pinnacle in making any type of initiative work, whether it has to do with technology or not.
Awesome. And I'm going to brag on Dana. She's not going to say it for herself, but their school district also did, you created a site for parents, right, to help parents understand what all this technology is. And now that's kind of one of those things. I'll tell my story really quick, but I want to wrap it back over to Dana because it kind of connects. When we were first becoming one-to-one in my school district a few years ago, one of the things that we realized was, and this was kind of in the early days of the Google suite, right? And so we were a Google school, and we had everything was in Google Docs and Google Classroom and Google Drive. And I spent a lot of time, obviously with the community as the director and kind of walking through all of this stuff. And I kept getting all of these parents who were, quote unquote, big deals in the community. They were bank presidents. They were, professors in the university. They were all this kind of stuff. And they came to me and they were like, we are super embarrassed. We don't know how to do this stuff. right? And so my kids are going into the 6th grade and going into the 3rd grade. And so this hasn't happened yet, but I always hear about, when your kids come home with homework and you don't remember how to do that, and all of a sudden they're asking you how to do something and you're like, oh gosh, let me go and figure this out. And so this was what was going on with our parents, and they felt like they could not, they didn't know how to do this, and they felt really, really ridiculous standing in front of their kids and all of this stuff. And so I realized, oh my goodness, we need to give back to this. And so as a Google trainer, I went and created partnerships with with a bunch of different community members. And so like with the bank, they used G Suite, they had Google Mail and all of this kind of stuff, but they didn't know what they were doing with it. So then I would go into their business and train all of their people on how to use Google Drive, how to use Google Docs, how to, so that it was familiar to the parents and it didn't cost them anything. It was a huge way for them to recognize like, oh, wow, the school is able to connect me. They were able to help us. And then the parents were then able to support their kids and kind of go through those situations. And so this was, of course, pre-pandemic. So that's why I want to wrap it back over to Dana, because Dana brought that training, that opportunity full circle by creating this site. So Dana, you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. So pre-pandemic, after we attended one of the institutes late in the fall, we started an initiative with equity and really looked at connectivity in our school district. We're a fully one-to-one district with Chromebooks, pre-K all the way up through 12th grade. And we knew we needed to do that because we tried a bring your own device initiative, and we found that there's a pecking order in a family. In other words, everyone has 8 devices. However, the youngest child gets to use one of those 8 devices when no one else is using it because someone has to write a paper, someone has work to do, there's research. So we started on this initiative to see where we were struggling a bit with connectivity in our community. That opened up a huge opportunity for us. We were able to provide some hotspots to families. That said, we also realized going through this process that there were some challenges with parents perhaps not really understanding exactly the tools that we had in our district, and also some of our faculty and staff where, you could repeat at a faculty meeting, 80 times and send emails out, but not everyone has time to read them. And, it's the end of the day during meetings. So sometimes people don't always have an opportunity to even listen. So we built this website prior to quarantine that had many different aspects associated to it. One of those areas was an IT help form. Basically, if you needed assistance, if there was something wrong with one of your devices, you filled out a Google form, and we were able to contact families and help remedy some of those situations. We're a very small department. It's myself and one other person, and we have a population of about 800 students, and we literally completed 400 of those requests during the time, from let's say March until June. So we did all sorts of delivery. We did home deliveries, home pickups, whatever needed to be done to make sure that the students that we serve were not going to go missing because they didn't have what they needed. Especially for our teachers too, that they had what they needed as well. So we did whatever we could, and part of that was in this website.
Is that website link public? Is that available to share with everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. I could put it in the chat.
Sure. If you can stick it in the chat, we'll make sure that it gets available to our audience out there live on YouTube and Facebook. Guys, we only have a few more minutes. I want to say thank you so much for sharing this. Everybody out there is loving this session. And of course, the website is futureready.org. We'll get you the exact website that Dana's talking about here. But Brianna, where is the future? When do we? Here's the question, right? When do we stop being future ready, and when do we just have to go? Because we were all future ready, and then boom, pandemic hits.
So a couple of things. Like one of the things that I like to say, because we hear it, in Texas, we say this all the time. I'm not sure everybody else, but that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? So several of us in the tech world definitely felt that way. I know that I would be kind of sarcastic and say, I bet some of y'all are wishing you'd paid a little bit more attention in that opportunity that we had to learn Google Classroom or whatever. But that said, I've also had the opportunity to learn calculus and it's never clicked for me, right? But it's only in that moment when you need it to work that you have that investment and that you have that interest in understanding it. So I do think that so many of us, and Jeff, you had mentioned the Future Ready assessment. That is not meant to be a one and done. That's meant to be continually take that, look at that. It's meant to, really kind of focus on where are our priorities, where do we want our priorities, and then what do we need to do that. So, we love to say that we are lifelong learners, and that's really truly, again, to kind of go back to my point over training. Training often means like, if you'll just memorize these steps, then you're going to be good and you've mastered it and you can go forward. But learning, you're never done learning. You're always finding something new, and we should never be done, right? We're never actually going to get to the future because the future is always moving forward. So even if you're completely and totally, absolutely at the golden edge of future ready situations, you should always be finding and pushing for a new situation, simply because our kids are changing every single day. Our technologies are changing every single day. So how can we improve that? And I think that that's really truly where we're at. Like, that's the thing that I love about Future Ready. It's not future done. It's not just future. It's you're constantly ready. You're constantly looking for those things. One of my friends, a superintendent friend, a few years ago, talked about how, on your stock list, whenever you open up that pamphlet from your financial investor or whatever, your stock report, at the bottom it says current market does not predict future success, right? Or like current situation. And so I think that that's one of the challenges that we have often is we rest on our laurels, right? Like we think like, okay, yes, I've done this. Check, we've achieved this. Check, we went 1-to-1. All right, but 1-to-1 doesn't mean that you're really future ready unless you're actually incorporating it into the instruction and really kind of coming at it through that way. So I love that. I think that that's one of the most important pieces of being future ready is truly constantly reflecting and constantly seeking ways to improve and remembering that it's all about that kid. It's all about the learning. And there's no such thing as 100% for everybody all the time. So find a way to change it up and meet each one of those kids. I often say, focus on the heartbreak instead of on the thing that makes you the most happy. And what I mean by that is it's really easy for us to identify the things that we've done really, really good and to focus on that and to say, yes, we're meeting all the needs. But we kind of need to step back sometimes and say, this is where we're not meeting it. And let's change this so that those kids get to have the same experience as the ones who are really, having that full opportunity.
And I certainly say that being future ready means never being finished. Because it's hard work, and Bree, you say this all the time, and I quote you all the time, so I'm going to go there. It's hard work because it's heart work. And if you think you have it all figured out, then it might be time to say it's the R word. The retirement might come into play. So,
yeah.
Guys, I want to say thank you. It has been a long day. It has been a long conference, and I'm so excited that we had the chance to connect this week and have you guys on. The website, of course, is futureready.org. You can check everything out. Let me just pull it up here one last time. There are wrong picture. There you go. There's a ton of resources out there. Definitely check out that framework. I'm sitting here studying it going, okay, that. Okay, I want to work on this. How do we work on this? And guys, please come on the show. We'd love to continue these conversations, love to continue working with you guys. And if anybody out there has any information or has looking for information, Brianna, where can we go to find you guys?
So you can find me personally at bhodges.edu on pretty much any platform. And I can, other than LinkedIn, and I'm Brianna Hodges at that. They wouldn't let me do bhodges.edu, but otherwise I've got all the rest of them are bhodges.edu. We would love for you to join and follow Future Ready, of course, on Twitter and Instagram, Future Ready Schools. On Facebook, the instructional coaches, we have our own Facebook group. So search us out, Future Ready Instructional Coaches. Lots of opportunity for us to have conversations in there and big things brewing. We have a Future Ready Instagram account for coaches. So FR Coaches on Instagram. And Dana, tell them where they can find you.
Nope, I'm easy. Dana Castine. You can find me anywhere with my first and last name. And definitely check out those social media accounts for Future Ready Instructional Coaches. We won't talk about what surprises we might have brewing a bit, but we are brewing quite a bit. So inquiring minds want to know, so definitely follow us.
Yes, big announcements to be coming in the next 2-ish weeks. So just be ready.
You've been listening to the TeacherCast Educational Network, hosted by Jeff Bradbury. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter @TeacherCast or online at www.teachercast.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.